The theme of this afternoon's event is Today Counts, the Next 200 Feet. Because today I have the honor of introducing Mr. Ken Ernie as our guest speaker. Coach Ernie, as he is more frequently known, is a native of Burlington, New Jersey. Upon graduation from high school, he attended Cedarville University, where he received his bachelor's in secondary education with a focus on social science. He went on to obtain his master's degree in school administration from Calvin College. Following college, he was a teacher, athletic director, and a coach at Fruitport Faith Christian School. After 9 years, the school closed and he taught for 2 semesters at Calvary Christian in Muskegon. In 1990, he was hired at Fruitport Community Education as a youth employment coordinator and varsity soccer coach, eventually stepping into the role of athletic director. Along with leading the athletic department, Coach Ernie spent 19 years as coach of the boys soccer program. He founded and built the soccer program at Fruitport High School, winning many district championships and receiving several regional championships. For his coaching career, which included 10 years at Faith Christian in Fruitport, Coach amassed an overall record of 335, 182, and 32. He was inducted into the Michigan Soccer Hall of Fame in 2015. He retired on September 1st after 30 years of serving Fruitport Community Schools. His retirement comes in the wake of a recent diagnosis of ALS. Through this diagnosis, Coach Ernie has continued to demonstrate all of the qualities that make him so special. His strong faith, family, and community continue to help him through this time. Ken has been a true mentor and a teacher to so many student athletes at Fruitport. Through his SALT, our student athlete leadership team, and through the relationships he built with so many young people, coaches, and staff here at the high school. He has served to provide quite the example for the rest of us. Coach Ernie is married to Lori. They have 4 grown children who are graduates of Fruitport schools and 5 beautiful grandchildren. Please join me in welcoming Coach Ernie.
Thanks, Laura. What an honor it is, you guys, and congratulations to students who are being called into the top 10%. To you guys that are parents, it's really, really an honor. And then the teachers and faculty that are here, congratulations to you too. Every one of those words are so significant. And students, I want you to know they'll last for a long time, that what you wrote is going to last. So it's already been introduced. My family, Lori's with me. Just a couple things about her that I appreciate. She's been with me for 42 years, but often off in the distance or at home taking care of raising kids, or soccer mom, tennis mom, basketball mom, you name it, that type of thing. So I do appreciate her, and as Lauren said, I've got 4 adult kids, and yeah, the rest, I appreciate that introduction. You know, like in a commercial that we see all the time, these commercials, many of them for medical things, and there's these disclaimers or fine print that you couldn't hear it if you slowed it down in half, but somebody's out there speaking it, they speed it up, and it's all the things that don't count. They're all the things that you should consider before you take this medicine or buy this product or whatever. They're called disclaimers. So I've got some disclaimers before we get started. One, I don't consider myself a public speaker. 2, I totally get it that whenever you listen to someone speak or say something, that at least I've read that most people will remember 20% of what you say. Now, there's debate as to whether that's a statistically provable data that's been researched fully, but I think I found that to be true. Many times I've sat in front of people and speeches and sermons or whatever, and by 5 o'clock, I wouldn't be able to remember too much. So I get that. And I get that, seniors, you've been in front of lectures or other things or talks of some kind, and you will be in the future. And the stuff you remember probably won't be that much. So that's my fine print. I totally get that. Maybe a couple will remember it, and maybe that's why I might repeat the theme a couple times, because it could go with you a few times. But you do remember the stuff that you experience more than the stuff you read or the stuff you hear about or speeches like this. But nevertheless, those are my disclaimers. So the speech, which I'm not a speech person, a speech writer, a speech giver per se in my mind, but now I think about it, it has an introduction, has some disclaimers, and it'll have the reason why I'm giving it. It'll have some personal stories, and it'll have 4 points to illustrate why I picked it, and 4 points that will be applications, and then will be a conclusion. And in about 15 minutes, I'll walk down here, hopefully. But also, I totally understand, and I appreciate your smiles under the masks, who you are, and I want to congratulate all of you as well. So this topic came to me maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And by the way, I would love to give credit to all the things I've learned to the people's names, because almost everything is somebody else's ideas and concepts applied to me in my life. And that's what students do too, right? All of us do as teachers. It's other people's ideas, and we incorporate them. But about 6 or 7 years ago, there's a guy named Brian Kane that I was able to follow on social media, and he's a baseball guru, motivational performance coach type of thing. And it's when I first heard of this concept of the next 200 feet. And that's kind of I want to get to that in a little bit, the next 200 feet. First of all, another caveat is if you've already heard of this or thought about this or know all about this, you heard it before, that I apologize. But today counts was a theme that I had for a soccer team maybe 20 plus years ago. And that was the yearly theme, today counts. And it comes back to me that an appropriate topic so that I can bring in my own life story and then challenge you guys as seniors too. Today counts, the next 200 feet, and in parenthesis I would say a framework for thinking. So if nothing else, I'd like to have you guys that are seniors, graduates, honors folks, think about how you think. Did you ever think about the thinking? And maybe that'll be part of it. So this illustration of the next 200 feet, it has implications for you, seniors. I cannot imagine the stuff you've gone through in terms of pandemic, uncertainties, loneliness, frustration, more pandemic, more loneliness. But this is an appropriate topic. It applies to my current situation too. And I'll do the very best I can to summarize what happened a year ago to what brought me here today. I'll try to do it the best I can. And I think it's important that when I have an opportunity to say anything to anybody, whether it's one-on-one or in groups like this, which does not happen very often, but I appreciate it, the topic always comes back to me. You hear the stuff about, like, when you point the finger at somebody, you always got 3 or 4, whatever, pointing back to you. I'm finding that to be true so much. So if I have something to say, you have the absolute right to say, well, what about you? Are you doing what you told us to do? And the answer is, you're right. It's a good challenge. So a year ago, I'll make this as quick as possible. Let's go back 15 months in March. We're sitting right over there with a basketball team trying to figure out how we're going to distribute tickets for the district finals, which Fruitport rarely competes in school history. And we were told we could give 2 tickets per person, and the game was Friday night. This was a Thursday. And then all of a sudden, phones started ringing, and And then we heard that the games were canceled. It's like, whoa, what's going on? So everybody goes home, March 13th. You know the drill. You were there. And by January that year, though, earlier, 2 months earlier, I was walking all around this construction zone stuff to the gym and back to the office, and 20,000 steps a day plus. And I was feeling weird stuff in my legs and my feet. I couldn't quite describe what it is, but they weren't working like my brain would say, left, right. And but it was so busy. We didn't really think about doing anything about it until after we shut down in March. And then, of course, you get to not be able to figure it out because everybody's closed down, their doctor's offices, blah, blah, blah. So all I could do is look at the internet, and that's, oh boy, what possibly could this be? And I know there's a lot of dangers and stuff like that. So all this stuff checked the boxes about what my symptoms were, and it was like, it says ALS. It doesn't make sense because the last thing says it's rare. So I just said, couldn't be because it's rare. It's like, I would never win a lottery because it's rare. There's only 30,000 people in the country that have this disease. It can't be this. It's got to be something else. So within about 2 months, which would have been May of last year, I was able to get to a doctor, be able to get some testing done in Muskegon. And Lori and I, obviously, we started tracking this. Something's got to be wrong. And we were so glad to hear that the doctor said, we don't know what this is, but it's not the bad stuff. It's not MS. It's not ALS. And we thought, yeah. And I'm thinking, oh, crap, I probably have a bad disc because when you get old, you hear all these stories about guys with bad backs, and that's why their feet don't work. And so we were grateful. And I remember sending out emails saying, this is what's happening. But the caveat was, I think you should go to a specialist anyhow. As soon as doctor's offices open up, we should go to Grand Rapids and Spectrum. So June the 30th last year, I'm going as fast as I can here. June the 30th last year, the neurologist in Spectrum in Grand Rapids said, he just asked questions, and he looked at me and he said, I think you need to come back tomorrow. Bring your wife. And he said, we'll retest you. And so June 30th, we retested, and this was the risk. So, excuse me. So we retested, and he says, there's undoubtedly you have ALS. And so Lori and I are sitting there like, holy cow, I was expecting a back problem. I wasn't expecting this. What do we do, Doc? And he said, go home and grieve. Okay. But at that point, and I'll stop with my story because I think it's best. My family was about a half mile down in a park, all gathered together. We met there, and it was the start of my journey. It was so awesome that they had my back. And we prayed, we cried, we shouted. It was awesome. Day one, that's what I would call it. So what I'm going to say about this topic comes right back to me. It just zips right back to me. And it's probably selfish for me to talk about it because you guys are those graduating seniors who have done so much right in your academic life. Why would anybody talk about a topic such as the next 200 feet or the importance of today? So what the next 200 feet refers to is the engineered headlights of your car. They're engineered to illuminate in the dark 200 feet. 200 feet. The next 200 feet. So like when you, and hopefully this weekend, we're going to fly, not drive, but let's say I was driving to Gainesville. The lights don't light up all the way to Gainesville. I mean, they light 200 feet, and then when I go 100 feet, there's another 200 feet that they light up. What a powerful concept. The next 200 feet. So I thought, wow, this is exactly what I need. And if I get a chance to share it with anybody, I will. So think about how it applies to you and to me. Could you go back, those of you that are sports fans, go back about 1 month ago in the NCAA men's basketball tournament? Do you think there were any teams that didn't apply the next 200 feet? Ohio State, Virginia, Iowa. They weren't thinking round one, probably. Now, I know they've got awesome coaches. They got team psychologists. They got all these people. And they probably were reminded, but probably didn't listen, that your focus should be in the next 200 feet. And as you get a little ways down, it's the next 200 feet. How does it apply to your mindset? And again, your mindset is how you think. So if you're sitting there and you're catching some of this, I get it. You're a senior. You got all these things. I know your senior year is filled with stuff, even no pandemic. It's filled with stuff like senior picture, senior prom. What do I do this? Where am I going to school? Applications, all this thing. And you're thinking, there's so much. I'm overwhelmed. But what about next 200 feet? How can it apply to some of your struggles today, right now? Your struggles, my struggles, your fears and my fears, anxieties. How does it apply to the goals you set in your life? So, may I suggest a framework for how to think about thinking? So, I got 4 things that are possibly called a mental model to help you face the future 200 feet at a time. First is appreciate each day. Whoa, easy for me to say, I'm talking to you guys and blah, blah, blah. Stop. Think about the mindfulness, that's a popular word now, of being in the present and appreciating each day. There's 86,400 seconds every day. You could call a second a moment, so you have 86,400 moments in a day. How am I spending them? Am I worried about the future? Or am I appreciating this day? I just read this week an article that, maybe yesterday or 2 days ago, that was on this topic. I just opened up a magazine and there it was. And the author said, our lives are a whole string of nows. Now, there are a whole string of moments. 86,400 moments. So appreciate each day. I know I got to do that. I encourage you to do that. I know it's especially hard for all the things on your plate, but you get a chance to stop and appreciate the day. Secondly, appreciate every conversation. Conversations. Appreciate every single one. Be present for them. Be present for every relationship in your life. Be present for each time you have that opportunity. I got to say that I hate ALS. I'll make that clear, and what it does to people. But there is something because of this that I get to do. It's a caveat. It's a Pandora's box. I hate it, but I get to do things I never would have done. One of them is conversations. I'm just thinking of one, but one in particular conversation with one of my sons that we wouldn't have gotten to if it wasn't for this. Man, I appreciate that. And there's more. Thirdly, which sounds uncharacteristic of an educator in an educational situation, is think less about the future and more about the present. I have been guilty of, ever since teaching in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, whatever, of asking people to set goals. And there's nothing wrong with that. Or, what do you want to do when you grow up is a really common thing, right? For a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 16 or a 17. And when you don't know what you want to do when you grow up, it creates a lot of anxiety. And so I think sometimes, I'll speak for me, we as adults can be guilty of something, and that's called What do you want to do when you grow up? We got to have a career pathway. And nothing wrong with career pathways, right? But what am I doing today? So think more about the present, and there is an irony here. And the fourth thing is to take care of one thing at a time. My job had been multitasking, multiple things happening at once, and all of us are like that. Teachers are like that, counselors, principals. But when you think about it, when you really think about it, get down there, you can only do one thing at a time, right? Now you can bounce from one thing to the other, but it's one thing at a time. So I'm guilty of not thinking, that way, but having a mindset of doing one thing at a time. So seniors, eventually you're going to graduate here, you're going to move on. Some of you will go to college, maybe not all, I don't know, maybe all the top 10% do, but you're going to be inundated with stuff. And you're going to have a mindset that says, I'm going to do one at a time. I can only do one thing at a time. Sure, I got 4 classes or a lab at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever, but what's now? What in this moment is important? And it took me a long time to even grasp this concept, so please understand that's not from an expert's point of view. So what are some of the secrets? And this is the second set of 4 points before conclusion. What are some of the secrets that I've learned or borrowed from people that I want to say are so valuable to my learning experience that I'd love to share them, and maybe by 5 o'clock you will or won't remember, I don't know. And they're not rocket science, but they're a little drum roll, and here they are. 1, give your very best all the time. Wait, what? Is it a secret to life? Give your very best all the time. I hope it's time for a quick story. I remember reading a long time ago a story about President Jimmy Carter, which probably when I was a teenager, he was a president. But he told a story of when he was in the military, he was in the Navy before running for president and served in the war, World War II. And he was up for a raise, not a raise, but a military uplift or whatever you call it. I don't know what I'm thinking of, but so he was being interviewed by an admiral, and so the admiral's sitting there and they're doing small talk for a few minutes, 5-6 minutes, and the one question asked future President Jimmy Carter was, did you always give your best? And it was just like deafening silence. And the way Jimmy Carter's talking about it is like it lasted forever. But that rung out in his head, and he had to fringe a little bit and move and wiggle, and he said, no, sir. And there was only one other question in the interview, and the admiral said, why not? Challenging to all of us. But Jimmy Carter said no more words in that interview. He excused himself politely and walked out of the room because he didn't have an answer. Always give your best, all the time. Do we flop? Do we fail? Yeah, because we lose focus. We're not in the moment. We don't pay attention to people's conversations, the mindfulness of being present, or whatever. Secondly, practice unconditional gratitude. Unconditional gratitude is a fantastic phrase. It means no matter what, I am thankful. I just told you that I hate the disease I got, but I'm thankful for the opportunities it brings. Fine line. I don't want to act brave here. But think about it. Practice unconditional gratitude. Every day, 29,000 children in the world die from things that could have been avoided. Get a grip on that. Pour water, no mosquito netting, disease that could have gotten under control. On and on and on. Do I ever wake up and say, I'm thankful for fresh water, for air to breathe, for sunshine? Do I ever say, there are some things, even in the middle of a pandemic, unconditional gratitude. I used to tell our players, do you ever thank the custodian? How many of you guys thank the guy for mowing the lawn today? Think about unconditional gratitude. There's so many times. I remember my youngest daughter one time tried to celebrate the head cook at her college at Cornerstone University. And she called it, whatever her name was, Day. And the whole school got involved. And it was like this changed the trajectory in a sense of her life, but also my daughter's. And it's like, be thankful. Show gratitude. This is like huge. And I hope that it's not so, oh, sure, show gratitude, be thankful. You're grateful to your parents for their sacrifices, to your teachers, you're showing it. Like, practice unconditional gratitude. Amazing. Thirdly, treat everyone really, really well. Oh, that's like as easy as the other two. Everybody that you know, think about it, everybody you come in contact with, every relationship, people you barely know, people you know fully. What would happen? Oh gosh, what would happen in our culture today if we all treated everybody really well? If we disagree, if we agree, but we treat them well. I think that's one of a handful of things that will determine your success. Nothing against your grades. Treat everyone really, really well. Everybody has infinite worth. If you get a chance, you probably won't remember this, but there's a TED Talk by a professor named Kent Hoffman, Kent Hoffman. And he's a professor, he's a researcher, sociologist, and he studied people all over the world, especially that live in poverty. But his conclusion was that everyone has infinite worth. Everybody. And that's like, oh, sure they do. But do we really act that way? Do we think about that? Are we saying that in the way that we behave? So anyhow, I throw that in there, but treat everyone really, really well. These are simple old man suggestions. The last one, again, it sounds, wait a minute, are you sure about that? The last one is burn your goals. It's off of a book entitled Burn Your Goals by another motivational sports guy, Josh Medcalf. His point is this. If you're not doing stuff in these 86,400 seconds that God gave you today, why do you even have a goal? When are you going to start working on your goal? So call your goals dreams if you want, but think about it. How can I expect something great to happen if I'm not doing something about it? That was the point. It was like a game changer in a sense, because it doesn't mean you don't set goals, but do something about your goals now. And obviously I'm talking to the choir in a lot of ways, right? I'm talking to the choir because you people have excelled more than anybody else in the school, and therefore you must have done goal setting correctly. And not because of anything I say or do, but I'm finding that every once in a while there's somebody who did everything right. Crossed every T, dotted every I. They did it all right, and here they are celebrating. But deep down, they're hurting about something. Deep down, they don't feel they're good enough. Deep down, somebody has left them a message that they're never going to amount to anything. And it's amazing that it happens with really, really high-level performers and those that aren't. So, give your very best all the time. Practice unconditional gratitude. Treat everyone really, really well. And be willing to burn your goals, especially if you're not doing anything in the meantime. So, I cannot find the author to this little phrase. I copied it for the students, and I've got them on my table over there. A little strip of paper. That's your graduation gift, I guess. But listen to what it says, and I hope you can apply it. So I'm going to say it's unknown. I read it again last week. Somebody else quoted it. and there's no citation. It's not Ken Ernie. Today is a gift from God. I can waste it or use it for good. What I do today is important because I'm exchanging it for a day in my life. When tomorrow comes, this day is gone forever, leaving in its place something that I've traded for it. I want it to be gain and not loss, good and not evil, success and not failure, service and not greed. In order for that, I should not regret the price I paid for it, for the future is a string of nows. So for me, I want to spend more time with people. Like today is awesome. Thank you for the invitation. And less time worrying about dying. I don't know the number of my days, but I do know that God does. And then for the next 200 feet, I choose to do my very best to understand that each day God is good at being good. The next 200 feet. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Ernie, for gracing us with your presence. A lot of us in the room who are staff have heard Ken speak to us about many different things. I can remember having him come in to a staff meeting and I just asked him to give us an overview on something. It was probably Jay Stebleton who called me out later on. It was like, geez, well, that was a hard act to follow, because he was literally I just wanted to preface something, and it ended up being a motivational moment for staff, just to, bringing us back around to who we are and what we're here to do. So he sells himself short when he says he's not a public speaker, because those of us who know Ken well have always said to him, later in life you should become a public speaker. Motivational, because he is. So thank you, Ken.